Alright, so I was kind of surprised here when I saw that new stuff had been released. Let me see if I can get that on frame there. And I couldn't help but take a peek. Um, Two new Megacolony cards have been released. It looks like they're finally continuing the Battler series, which, if you don't know, ever since the start of Megacolony, they went like Megacolony Battler A, B, C, D, I think like all the way up to F, G. Like they did a lot of them, but I couldn't help but peek at them. But let's talk about them real quick and look at really like how useful they are, like what builds you can incorporate them in. But yeah, so Battler S, when it's placed under a guard, not from only from hand, so that's really good. Soul Blast 1, with Malignantes and Giraffa and Megarla, there's so many ways to get stuff into your soul, so it's nice to see more cards that actually utilize the Soul Blast cost. So your opponent chooses a card from their hand, calls it to rearguard's rest, they draw a card, and that called unit cannot stand during their next stand phase. They don't get any auto abilities. So this is really weird because number one, it's not once per turn. So you could play this in Megacolony and maybe deck your opponent out, which is kind of interesting, kind of funny. They draw a card, which I really don't like. Yeah. My only guess is that with Giraffa, this is to essentially burden overstuffed boards. So if your opponent has like 4 or 5 rear guards, then your opponent would call one from hand, they would draw one, and then they would have to call 2 more, and then with Jerk, they would have to discard some. They would essentially just have to keep getting rid of cards here. And when I glanced at this, I didn't see the draw card clause, and that's really bad. So in my mind, that's more of a Megacolony deck, especially since they haven't gotten cards in a long time. It's really bad. Then there's the drop skill, which if your opponent has no cards to stand, you can discard a card, call it, and soul charge. It's interesting, but it's not great. Obviously, you can get the skill off of calling it from the drop zone, so it's kind of like Intrude Scissors, where it's kind of like, oh, put it on place, you use the skill, the standard rear guard, has application to Machining, blah 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 blah. You can also use it to multi-attack, but yeah, so I don't know. I thought it was really good, but seeing that it lets the opponent draw a card, it just gives the opponent more resources. I guess with Cradle, you can also set up Cradle when your opponent hasn't played any rearguard. So maybe it does have application, because when your opponent loses a unit with Cradle, then you get to search a card. So I can kind of see this being useful in a Dark Face deck, kind of, especially when the grade 2 lineup isn't that great. But let's look at the next one. So High Cost Math and Water Gang are being reprinted, which I don't know why, because Water Gang's been reprinted like 4 times. It's a common, it's really not that good. Or it's like a rare, but it's not a rare. I don't know. High Class Moth, I mean, it's a must have. If people don't have enough of it, then I don't mind if it gets reprinted. But this is the new one. Really cute card. Battler M. Really like the energy it gives. No, like really like the idea of this like moth that like charges regardless, and like M for moth. It's just a really cute card. When it's put on great, great for Guardian Circle, for every 2 of your opponent's units at rest, this unit gets shield plus 5,000. I also didn't read this card all the way. I thought it was a power creeped Guard Slug, but apparently it's not. In case you don't know, Guard Slug is a 6k power grade 1 that gets 5,000 power or 5,000 shield for every one of the back row units at rest. Inlet's retired. If your opponent has no units at stand, call this card to an open rearguard circle, soul charge away. So there's definitely a theme here where you're building numbers off of using your skills, which is interesting. Because you're building advantage. So I'm guessing this is supposed to play into the reverse mechanic. And the only thing I could really guess is that this looks like we're getting a Giraffe reverse. Because we never got the grade 0 for Giraffe. We didn't get the starter with that. So we're technically missing a Giraffe card despite it getting more power with cards in Soul. I had hoped these tech cards would be better, honestly. I mean, it's nice to see a Megacolony card, so maybe I'll play this. Maybe I'll try this and see if I can make a deck out build. Kind of see what really is going on there. It's nice that it doesn't have 8,000 power. I'm really glad they're making the powers more consistent. Never mind. Oh, wait, no, it's a great one. Right. I had under flashbacks. There's some other stuff revealed, but I don't really care too much about that. It seems both of these cards are designed more towards the paralyzed side, although I think that Battler S doesn't really work with Martial Mutant. I think Martial Mutant's a really bad card. It's nice to see that they're making more cards that Soul Blast, though, because I think they realized, like, if you use Martial Mutant's skill, you paralyze 2 cards, then you use the other skill to not only counterblast, but discard a card, and hopefully your opponent has cards on rear guard, then you're counterblasting 2 before you use any other attack skills that you have on that charm. That's Killer Leaf, that's Elite Mutant, that's any card that has any kind of meaningful, like, stack on your rear guard before even Water Gang. And the thing is, like, a lot of people are like, oh, well, Megacolony has so many resourcing cards. Okay, but how many of those are you playing? You can't play all of them. You can't play 4 Battlefly Deputy, 4 Battler M, because then what are you going to do with all the other grade 1s? What are you going to do with Jerk? What are you going to do with Phantom Black? What are you going to do with Pupa? What are you going to do with the... there's more. There's more. Blister. Like, you got to be able to play those cards. So seeing them focus more on the soul aspect, which I wish they did more with other clans, is balance, like, the cost difference. Like, they're giving more counter charge, they're giving more soul charge, which is huge in my opinion, but there's still clans like Neo Nectar, which they don't really use costs, or if they do use costs, they use too many costs. But hopefully they fix them for the rest of these, because I don't know. But they seem really good for V Premium. The only kind of premium vibe I get from Battler S is a Megacolony build. So you just play every card that has mill, and then you play resources, and then you play Overwhelm. Essentially, you out-resource your opponent, and you basically guard them out until they run out of cards. And you might not get all the extra skill effects, but the idea isn't that they get extra skill effects, the idea is that they deck out. So, yeah, I'll definitely have to try that. It'll definitely be really interesting. I don't see that happening anytime soon. I had more to say when I was thinking about this, but I kind of just like, new Megacolony cards. They haven't released the reverse yet, which I assume they have them all done. They're just making the art for them at this point. Because, like, look at these cards. These cards look really good. Like, look at that. That's so cool. That, like, kind of drone aspect. Like, these are Megacolony battlers. These are their troopers. These aren't, like, their, like, ace people. These are, like, their servants. These are, like, the minor villains. It's crazy. And it's S for Spider, because why not? It's funny. Always liked that they had an impact on the English language. Like, the titles are always like in English, like the phonetics are English, kind of like Dragonic Overlord, Rebirth, like it's English. It's weird. Trying to think if there's anything else you could use this for. I think, and this is kind of the problem I had with Giraffa, is that your opponent gets to choose. And at first I was worried because, again, I didn't see the draw card that this was like turning Megacolony into a Nubatama deck. And I hate Nubatama. I despise Nubatama's design and how it punishes a long game for just having a long game. It's not like balancing resources or anything. It's just like, oh, if you played long enough, you lose. Kind of. But it doesn't look like they're going for that playstyle. They're going for more, your opponent has to attack the resources, but even that's bad. Again, unless you can cradle it, but you're paying a cost for this. You're paying a cost for your opponent to get rid of a card and getting a card for free. I think Cyclomatooth and Gunning Coil are still really expensive cards, which I don't think they've been reprinted either, so I don't know why they're reprinting Water Gang and High Class Moth. Like, High Class Moth I get, because if people don't have him, he's like a very critical card for Megacolony right now, but Water Gang I don't understand. I guess because he's a grade 2 card, but I don't see why Water Gang would be reprinted at all. Especially since he's such like an easy like hit, like, oh, you're playing Water Gang on your rear guard. Be a shame if like someone attacked it, right? It's not like you're gonna guard it. You're gonna use your resources on your Vanguard because there's so many other clans that hit harder than you. But sorry I'm not looking at M, because M just doesn't seem that good to me. Unless there's like a soul-focused Megacolony deck, which the only one is Giraffa. But, I mean, that's only V Premium. And I'm not as big of a fan of Preview Premium. It's still fun to me. But I'm just not as much of a fan of it. And I can't get it on screen. No, not the Hamskay. Only Megacolony. No hamster. But, yeah. I thought it was better Guard Slug. It's not. I guess they couldn't give Megacolony too much like guarding potential, like make a stall build with the grade 1s, because that would be silly. But yeah, these were the 2 new Megacolony cards, and like kind of my thoughts about them. I think that focusing on the soul aspect was really smart of them. I think that by giving them skills like these, they're playing more to the idea that Megacolony isn't a great advantage deck, and that their drop zone should be more of a resource. Because Intrude Scissors, when Intrude Scissors first came out, I thought it was crazy, but the more I play with it, the more I realize that in a real choke situation, you're not going to want your opponent to be at 5 damage, it's not going to be consistent, it's going to be terrible. And then I played more with the Hell Demise, and I realized, like, oh, this grade 3 without a gift marker is actually really good. And it paralyzes back row as well. It's crazy. It's a tech card, especially with the new Gridora, but again, relying more on the drop zone, giving like more advantage cards, like, and it's totally fair. You discard a card, you trade 1 and 1. You can't say that S is unfair. I've seen some people say like, oh, you paralyzing is unfair, and I'm like, retiring an entire rear guard is unfair. Binding an entire rear guard is unfair. Making someone discard 5 cards is unfair. Paralyze is not unfair. It is the weakest mechanic, in my opinion. And some people might say Highlander is the weakest mechanic, even though it's very good if you can get it to work properly. But yeah, it's a cute card. I don't know. I love the design of it. He's so cute. Look at him. He's gonna keep charging even though you're hitting him. He's a good man. He's a moth. He's a cute moth. He's not dapper, but yeah. Wrapping it up again. Megacolony cradles giraffe, essentially. That's essentially what I'm deeming these are good for. I don't look at Machining, so I apologize if you play Machining. I don't really see these cards being useful in Machining, especially since you kind of need to play all Machining cards. There's not really room for these two. Maybe we'll get a Machining reverse. I don't really see it because they're kind of going back to this concept of having more generic cards. If anything, I see this being a Martial Mutant reverse. I see them doing the Cyclomatooth reverse, the Giraffe reverse. The fact that they're focusing so much on Paralyzed tells me it's Giraffe reverse because Martial Mutant is terrible. I really don't like it. It requires that your opponent has board presence already, and I get that these cards play into that, but it costs so much for so little. You get you get one drive. Yep, Counterblast 2 for a 20k power card, and discard 1 for 3 drive, when other people just have to Counterblast 1. Drive. I don't know. I mean, we got Blister, and we got Machining Orbital, which maybe I'll mess with the Machining build at some point if people want. I think I'll mess with the Megacolony first, because Megacolony is so interesting. It's still expensive because it's DRs, but I have 2 Gunning Colio, so if I can build it at some point, I will, because I don't know, Megacolony's fun. But yeah, that's everything. Hope you all have a good day.